Warm greetings, good people. We meet once again. We are looking at production factor, which is called capital. Remember, I said we have four production factors that we have to talk about. We have land, we have labor, we have capital, we also have management. So we are now looking at capital. When we look at this production factor, good people, one thing that I want you to note, we will define these terms. We have to be able to define the term capital itself. We have to define asset. We have to define credit. We have to define grant. We have to define interest. We also have to define collateral, but we'll define it when we reach that section whereby we will talk about that term or that concept. So we have to be able to master the definition of capital, asset, credit, grant, interest, and collateral. We will then look at the different types of capital. When we look at the different types of capital, we must be able to provide relevant examples for those different types of capital. Before we get to the methods of creating, we have to talk about the methods of creating capital. We'll just have about 3 methods of creating capital. When we are still talking about this one, we have to then look at the different types of credit. We'll define credit, and then we will look at the types of credits that we have. And when we look at the types of credits that we have, we will link them with the capital that can be bought using that credit. We have to also talk about asset, whereby we'll look at types of assets. We will talk about that one. Then we have to also talk about the problems that are associated with what? With capital. So that's what we will check, good people. Defining the terms, talking about the types of capital, methods of creating capital, sources of what? Of capital. When we talk about the sources of capital, then we will talk about the different types of credits, and then we'll look at the problems that are associated with capital, which is the most important part when we look at this section. Okay, good people, let's try to look at this one. When we look at capital, we say capital is the money and produce goods and assets, for example, such as buildings, equipment, and vehicles that can be used in the production process of other goods and create income. So we say is the money and produce goods and assets such as buildings, equipment, vehicles that can be used in the production of other goods, and we also use it to generate or to create what? To create income. So we call it capital. So we're looking at the equipment that we have in our farm. We look at the vehicles, we look at the buildings that we have. We also focus on money that we have in our farm, which can all be used to generate what? To generate income. That's what we check. Let's quickly look at the different types of capital. We have 3 types of capital, good people. Remember, I said master the name of the capital and example. We will also look at the definition a little bit. But one is that we have the first capital, or we call it fixed capital. When we look at a fixed capital, we say this is a capital that is immovable. This is a kind of a capital that cannot be moved or cannot be changed from position 1 to position number 2. So we call them fixed capital. They are stationary. They are fixed in that position where they are. So you cannot say, when we talk about fixed capital, this is a capital whereby even if you change the position of your farm, even if you decide, okay, let me move from this location to another location, there is no way you can move with that capital. You will leave it there because we say it is immovable, or we say it is what? it is fixed or stationary. That is a fixed capital. Remember, if I can go back a little bit to land as a production factor, we said one of the economic characteristic of land is that it is fixed. So we can categorize land as a fixed capital because it cannot be moved from one position to another position. So the first one that we have, we say it's fixed capital. Let's try to have a look at some few examples. Other examples you will think about them. One, we have example which is land, the one that we have just highlighted. We can talk about buildings. All the buildings that we have, it can be a broiler house, it can be a broiler house, or any building that we have in a farm. It can be a storage house or what. We can categorize them as what? As fixed capital. We can also talk about a fence. Some they have a wall fence, some they have other fence. We can say all of those are fixed capital. We can also talk about boreholes or windmills. They fall under fixed capital. Remember, we say these are fixed capital because they cannot be moved from one position to another position. They are immovable capital. That is capital number one, good people. Let's have a look at capital number two. Capital number two, we give it a name and say it's movable. Movable capital. This one is very clear. When we look at a movable capital, we can say this is a capital that can be moved from one place to another place. It's a capital that can, or these are goods that can be moved from one place to another place. Then what are those capitals, or what are those goods that can be changed in their position? We come up with some examples. You can think about tractors. You can think about other machinery, other equipment. We can also even think about livestock. You can move your animals from this position or from this farm to another farm. You think about your chickens, you think about your pigs, all the animals that you have in your farm, they can be moved from one farm to another farm. Hence, we say these are movable capital, these are movable goods. Let's look at number three. We also have this one which we call working capital. In some cases, you'll find that they say it's a working capital. They can say it's a production capital. They can say it's a floating capital. I want you to be able to come up with all these three names. Words that can be used here. They can say production, they can say working, they can say floating capital. What are we talking about when we talk about floating capital? This is a capital, or these are goods that are used during or in the production process in a farm. So when we do the production, we will need them. We call them what? Production capital. Hence, they are needed during the production process. Let's have another one. Let's look at an example. When we talk about the examples of this one, you can think of seeds. They are used during the production process. You can think of fertilizers. You can think of salary. You can think of wages or fuel. They are all used during the production process. Hence, we say it is a capital or goods that are used during the production process. Three of them, good people. Fixed, movable, working, or production. Let's try to think of something. Let's say this is your farm. There is fence here. There is fence here. In the farm, this is a building. In this building, you can get fertilizers, you can get seeds. Then here, you have your cattle, they are grazing. You have your cattle, they are grazing. Now you come across a question. The question says, identify types of capital with their examples. The question is divided into two. One, they say identify type of capital in the picture and the example of that capital. So you give the type of capital and the example. If you look, we have number one, fixed capital, movable capital, working capital. We want you to give us the type and the example. Type and example, type on example. The first thing that you can think of, we say this is a farm. This farm, there's what? A fence. So we can say one capital that we have is fixed capital. Example of a fixed capital, we can think of fence. Again, in fixed capital, we say this is a building. That's what we said, good people. We say this is a building. This building, it falls under what? Fixed capital. We then said, here you have cattle that are grazing in the grazing yard or grazing field. The cattle, they fall under movable. They can be moved from one position to another position. So the type is movable. Example, cattle or livestock. In the building, number three, in the building we said there is fertilizer, seeds. It falls under what? Under working capital. So we say working capital is the type, and the example, it can be the fertilizer or the seeds. So that's how you may come across the question. It's whether they will give you a picture or else they give you a scenario. So it's very important for you that when you read the question, you are able to understand or to analyze or to highlight, okay, this is a capital, this is a capital. Then you categorize it. It falls under which type of capital. But we will look at some of the questions as we move along, good people. Let's look at the methods of creating capital. I do believe that you're able to get that one. I will just list these methods. I will not explain much. One, we have individuals' own savings, whereby you find that the farmer started by saving money before starting the business. You talk about production and local market sales. Maybe he sells something and then he takes that money to invest in his farm, in his business. We can also talk about credit loans and grants. So you decide to get a credit, or you get grant from a government. We will define these two terms, credit and grant. So with this one, just master them in terms of listing. Individuals' own savings, production and local market sales, credit loans, and grant. Even here, what they can do or what they will do, they will give you a scenario. In that scenario, then they will ask you, which method did the farmer use to create capital? So make sure that you check whether the farmer had savings, the farmer took a loan, or the farmer had some production sales. So it's very important. But if they say list, it will be very easy for you because you will just take them as they are. But in some cases, they give you a scenario and then you have to pick one or two that they used in this scenario. It will be easy for this one, good people. Let's quickly look at the sources of finance. Let's say you want to take a credit. Where can you get the credit? You can get it from trust companies. In this case, just master the terms and the matter of listing them. You can get it from trust companies. You can get it from commercial bank, financial institution, agricultural cooperatives, and agribusinesses. You can also get it from potential business partners. So I do believe that you'll be able to recall this one. We say trust company, commercial bank, financial institution, agricultural cooperatives, and agribusiness. Then we look at potential business partner. It will be easier for you to know this one. So the methods of creating, be able to list them. The sources of finance, be able to master them. At least if you can know at least a minimum of 3, not a maximum, a minimum of 3, you will be safe. Let's look at credit. Let's look at the different types of credit. When we talk about a credit we say this can be loan or advances that are given to borrowers to enable them to finance and service production activities that has to be repaid with an interest. So we can say credit is money that is borrowed, or that a farmer is being borrowed by the bank, and that money has to be repaid back with what? With an interest. That's how you can master credit. Money that you are being borrowed, and you have to pay it back with what? With an interest. When we do the financial documents, you'll see how we calculate interest. So we say money that you are borrowed by the bank, and you have to pay it back with what? With an interest. That's how we easily understand it. That's a credit when we want to understand it in a very simpler way. Let's have a look at the types of credit. When we look at the types of credits, good people, these are three things that I want you to master. One, know the name of the credit. Two, know the duration of payment. How long can a farmer pay back the credit? Because remember, we said a credit must be paid back with an interest. Three, know which capital can be bought using that credit. So three things: name of the credit, duration of paying back the credit, capital that can be bought using that credit. Okay, fine. Let's have a look at them. We have these, good people. We have a long-term credit, which is number one. The long-term credit can be paid back in a duration of 10 to 35 years. So we say it can be paid back in a duration of 10 to 35 years. Which capital can be bought using that credit? We say it's fixed capital. It's a long-term credit that can be paid back with a period of 10 to 35. The name of the capital that can be bought is fixed capital. Number two, medium-term credit. It can be paid back within a period of 2 to 10 years. If we say it can be paid back within a period of 2 to 10 years, which capital can be bought? We can buy a movable capital. We can buy a movable capital. We then have the next one, short-term credit. A short-term credit, we have to pay it back 12 months or less, a year or less. And the capital that can be bought using that credit, we can buy a production capital, which we also call a working capital or a floating capital. So these are the three credits. Long term, 10 to 35 years. Which credit? The one that is fixed. Which capital can be bought? The one that is fixed, I beg your pardon. Medium term, 2 to 10 years. Which capital can we buy? Movable. Short term, 12 months or less. Which capital can we buy? Working capital. It's one of the of the easiest thing to understand. So what they can do in the exam, they can give you a list of capital or pictures of capital. Then they will ask you which credit can we buy, can we use to buy this capital. So the first thing, start by classifying the capital, identifying the type of capital. Once you know that, oh, that is a fixed capital, it means we can use a long term. Once you see, oh, that is a movable capital, it means it's medium term credit. That's how you will get such questions, but we will look at them as we move along with our presentation. We look at those example questions. Take note of this thing, good people. Most of the time, after a slide or after a certain concept that we explain, I also highlight to you how can a question be examined. So take note of that part, because this is how you have to sharpen yourself, or you have to train yourself going forward to the exam. Be able to understand the concept as it is, and also know how can you expect the question in the exam. Let's quickly move on to assets. When we define assets, good people, we say these are things that the farmer owns and they have a financial value. These are things that the farmer owns and they have what? A financial value. I was supposed to underline this part, because in an exam, when they give you this definition, it's 2 marks. You'll get a mark for saying things that the farmer own and financial value. That's how you will get the marks. So these are things that the farmer own and their financial value. We will talk about this one when we talk about a balance sheet, when we look at the financial documents, whereby we compare it with what? With liabilities, whereby liabilities we say things that the farmer owes. But assets, what is it that a farmer owns? And that has what? A financial value. Let's quickly look at the types of assets. We have current assets. These are assets that will usually be sold or used within 1 year. Sometimes they call them short-term assets. We have some example: money in the bank, available stock on hand, or marketable livestock. These are goods or things that can be sold within a period of 1 year. We also have movable assets. They have a lifespan of 1 to 10 years, and they support what? Production. You can talk about machinery and some breeding livestock. One thing that you must understand, that these assets, they tend to decrease their value, which we call depreciation. We will look at depreciation as one of the problems that is associated with what? With capital. So we have current assets, they are used in that production period. We have movable assets, they can be used, or they are available for about 1 or 10 years, or 2 to 10 years. We also have the last one, which is fixed assets. These are assets that are purchased for long-term use. Some of the examples, you can think about land, you can think about buildings. And these assets are used for more than one production cycle or one production period, and they are not easily converted into cash. One thing that I want you to understand here, if you look at the examples of these assets, they are almost the same to the examples of the types of credit, or of the types of capital. We have current assets, it goes with production capital. We have movable assets, it goes with movable capital. We have fixed assets, it goes with fixed capital. So if you can try to check there is a link between these types of assets and the types of credits. Let's use this table to see how we can summarize all of this. We have this table, good people. This table, I just want you to see how they are linked. We have a type of capital, fixed. The name of assets, again fixed. Which credit can we use to buy that capital or asset? Long term. With another capital, movable. Credit asset, movable. Which credit can we buy using? Can we buy the movable asset or capital? Medium. The last one, working. Remember, working, we can also call it floating or production capital. And we can buy it using what? A short-term credit. Good people, in some cases, you will find that they call a fixed asset a long-term asset. They call a movable asset a medium-term asset. They call a current asset a short-term asset. So I think this table will assist you in analyzing or understanding all of this information. Okay, fine, good people. Let's look at this last part, which is very crucial. I will try to take time when we're analyzing this. Let's look at problems. Let's look at problems associated with capital. When we look at the problems associated with capital, I want you good people to focus on them, to focus on the examples that we will use here. We have to focus on the examples. We have this one, scarcity. When we look at scarcity as a problem, we say some financial or many financial institutions, they are reluctant, they are hesitant to provide a new farmer with some finances because they doubt their ability to repay the loan. You find that this farmer, he don't have a good profile, or he don't have a good records. They doubt that he will be able to pay back the loan. So this makes the farmer to face difficulties or scarcity to pay back the loan. It can also go with what with high interest rate, because the farmer may not be able to pay back the loan because of high interest rate. So when we talk about scarcity, we say this farmer will not be able to pay back the money. So as a result of that, they will not give him the loan, or they will doubt giving him what? The loan. They will be reluctant. So in this case, you may find that even the farmer is having some difficulties in terms of finding money to pay back his laborers. So he has to go to the bank and get a loan. So he may face difficulties that if you can't pay your laborers, how can you come back and pay us our money? So we can say short-term credits is used to pay laborers. It means there is scarcity in that capital. We have number 2. I want you to understand this one. Over-capitalization. When we talk about over-capitalization, if I can put it in a simpler way, we say here it's whereby the farmer invests more into the business than what is required by the business. The farmer invests more than what is required by the business. In this case, we say, occurs when more money is put into the farm than can be earned from it. With this one, let's try to use some examples. Let's make this example that is usually used. Let's say we talk about a silo where we can store maize. Let's say you have a farm. This farm, it can produce 10 tons of maize. So it means you have to build a silo. Some say it's a silo. A silo or silo that will be worth 10 tons or a little bit more for the maize to breathe. So we say if you want to build a silo for this production, it must be able to cater for 10 tons. But you as a farmer, you decide to build a 25 tons of what? Of silo. So what we have done here, you have invested more, you have used more money to build a silo, which is more than what your business can earn or what your business can produce. That's why we say you have invested more than what you need. It's like you buy 3 tractors. Like you buy 3 tractors. And these 3 tractors, you only use one. You only need one in your farm. So what you can say there, you can say you have used more money in the business than what you require. Or else you decide to buy a big truck, but you don't need a big truck. You only need just one buggy. So you have invested more than what you need. Hence, we say it's over capitalization. You have invested more capital or over or more capital that you are in need of. And that's a problem that we encounter, because it means all the other resources will be underutilized and some money will go into waste. That's how we try to understand this one. So we say you had invested more than what you require. Let's quickly look at this one. They are almost they are almost the same. Let's look at this one. Under capitalization. When we look at under capitalization, good people, under capitalization we say you invest less than what you require. Means that you invest less capital than is required to run the farm, which hinders productivity and leads to loss of income. It's the opposite of overcapitalization. Here, you have invested less money into the business than what you require. Overcapitalization, you have invested more. But take note of the fact that in this case, they hardly come up with the same definitions, but they will use some examples. So it's very important for you that you know that, okay, this is an example that is linked with this problem. This is an example that is linked with this problem. So you will come across different examples. But in overcapitalization, just take note that there is more money that is invested. Under capitalization, there is less money that is invested. Okay. The next one, we have cost. When we look at cost, good people, because we say some goods are expensive, so it's not easy for the farmers to get those goods. Some machinery is expensive, so the farmers may not be able to buy those machinery. Even borrowing, renting those machinery is not an easy thing. So you'll find that a farmer may not be able to do his business that will give him a profit because he lacks certain equipments. So we say here, most goods are expensive and it is costly to borrow money to invest in capital goods. Hence we say it is costly. We also have another problem, which will be the second last. We call it depreciation. Most goods, especially the movable goods, most goods, they depreciate. Even some of the fixed, especially building, they depreciate. If we say they depreciate, it means they lose value over time, or their value decreases over time. You have to take note of this summary or these additional definitions that I put. The value of the good decreases over time. Hence we say they have limited lifespan. So under depreciation, we say most capital goods lose value over time. In this case, good people, it's whereby you find that you buy a tractor with 500,000. After a certain period, maybe 4 or 5 years, you have to sell that tractor. Will you sell it with the 500,000? Exactly. The answer is no. You will sell it with money that is less than the 500,000. Maybe it will be about 350,000 or 300,000. So what has happened to the value of the product or of that capital? The value has decreased. Hence, we say the value has depreciated, and we call that problem depreciation. So in this case, they can also come up with such examples. So that's why we say some products or some capital, they have a limited lifespan because their value decreases as time continues. Let's have a look at this last one. When we look at this one, good people, we have this one which is high risk factor. They like this one. When we look at high risk factor, good people, we say agricultural products or the field of agriculture, the Department of Agriculture, is facing a risk. It faces a risk of climate change. It also faces a risk of theft. What may happen is that you can have your crops. When you have your crops, then there is floods. It washes away all your crops. It means there will be no profit. It's one of the problems. The drastic change in the climate will result to the drop in your production or in the yield that you are expecting. Drought may result to the drop in the production. Spread of diseases in your livestock may lead to your livestock dying. It's a high risk. There's a problem of stealing of livestock. There's a problem of stealing of livestock. You can have your livestock, but then all of a sudden it's being stolen. It's of high risk of what? Of theft. Even your bakkie, even your tractors, they can be stolen. So we say those changes, we say the climate change brings risk to your capital. Theft brings risk to your capital. But how we understand it here, we say there are many factors that the farmer cannot control, such as weather patterns, diseases. We can also add theft. It makes your capital to be at risk in that factor. So we say there is high risk of what? Of capital. That's how we can understand these, good people. That's how we can understand this. Let's try to look at them. Scarcity, we say if I can try summarize it, the farmer may not be given a loan because they doubt that he will be able to pay it back. So it makes it scarce for him to get loan. His profile is not good. His records are not trustworthy. And overcapitalization. The farmer invests more than what the business requires. He buys more tractors than what the business requires. He buys more bakkie than what the business requires. He builds a big silo than what the business requires. He builds a big storage room than what the business requires. Undercapitalization. The farmer invests less. You have a big field where you can farm, but you decide to have one tractor and a small tractor. You have invested less. You have to transport your product, your cabbages, using a big truck. You decide to buy a small bakkie. You have invested less. It's undercapitalization. Costing. You say some capital are cost, and it is expensive to even pay back the loan because of what? Because of the high interest rate. Depreciation. The value of the product decreases over time. You buy a product, you buy a capital with this amount of money. When you sell it, you will sell it with money that is less than. the one that you have bought. So the price of the product has decreased. Hence we say the value decreases. High risk, we say capital or goods that are at risk of weather conditions, pests and diseases, or what? Or theft. That's how we easily understand them. Let's quickly look at the terms that I want you to understand. I will close. I know that I have taken a lot of time. Let's look at some terms that I can't leave without highlighting them. We have this term, we've talked about it, whereby we talk about credit, money that you are given by a financial institution, and you have to pay back the money with an interest. That is our credit. Grant, I want you to master the difference between these two terms. A grant, it's money that you receive. You can receive from government or local authorities, and you don't have to pay back that money. So a grant, it's money that you receive from government or local authorities, and that money does not have to be repaid. We call it grant. Credit, it must be paid back with an interest. Grant, it must not. You're not supposed to pay it back. Then we have interest. When we look at interest, we say is the amount of money that a bank charges for lending you capital. We'll look at how we calculate interest as we move along to the financial document. So you will borrow money. Let's say you borrow a loan of 200k. When you borrow the loan of 200k, you will pay the 200k with an interest. So it is the money on top of the loan that you have borrowed. So it's what the bank charges after borrowing you the money. You have to pay back the loan with an interest. Then we can also look at this one, collateral. When you borrow money, before you borrow a loan, they will ask you, what form of security, what security can we be assured that if you fail to pay back the money, we can get our money back? That's how they can ask you. What is it that we can get if you fail to pay it back? They call that a collateral, whereby we say it's a form of security that is required by the bank before granting you a loan. We call it collateral. Then we have assets. We have highlighted assets, whereby we say things you own and they have what? They have a financial value. That's what we highlighted. I know that I have taken a lot of time, but allow me to look at these few questions. Let's look at this question. Name the problem of capital associated with each of the following statements. Name the problem of capital associated with each of the following statements. Number 1 or number 12, 5.12.12. A farmer bought 3 tractors and 2 luxurious bakkies, which are underutilized. 3 tractors, 2 bakkies. What is happening with these bakkies? They are underutilized. So how can we say which problem is this one? It means the farmer have invested more into the business than what the business requires. Hence we say it's underutilized. So we can say it's over capitalization. It's over capitalization. Number 2, 5.12.13. Drastic changes in the climate resulted in a drop in the expected yield. Drastic changes in the climate. It shows that this capital is in high risk of weather conditions. So we can say high risk. Short-term credit is used to pay laborers. There's no more credit. There's no more money to pay the laborers now. What does it say about that one? It means there is scarcity of capital. There is scarcity of capital. Simple. The next one, number 15. A farmer sold a tractor bought 5 years ago at a lower price. He bought the tractor with a certain amount of price. When he decided to sell it, he sell it at what? At a lower price. What has happened to the value of the of the tractor? It has decreased. So we can call it what? Depreciation. Simple. This is how we have it. Over capital, high risk factor, scarcity, and depreciation. Simple stuff. That's how you get your free marks. Let's quickly look at this one, good people, in the interest of time. You are given this one. Different forms of capital utilized on farms are shown in the illustration below. Answer the questions based on this illustration. So you are given the picture there. There is a fence, there is land, there is a building over there. These are your horses, if I can say these are horses. Then you have a planter here. Name the example of types of capital in the picture. That will require a long-term capital, that will require a medium-term capital. What are they saying? They want what? An example that can be bought using a long-term capital. Remember we said a long-term capital is used to buy a long-term credit is used to buy a fixed capital. Then let's come back to the picture that we have. Let us identify a fixed capital here. What do you have here? You have this land. It's a fixed capital. So we can say one of the example is land, because they say let us give the example. What do you have? You have this building. It also falls here. You also have this fence. It's also a fixed capital. Number 2. Name the example that of the type of capital in the picture that will require medium-term credit to acquire. Medium-term credit. Remember, a medium-term credit can buy a movable capital. You look at the picture. You have animals here, horses. You also have the planter here. Simple stuff. The next question, 5.13.2. List 3 problems that are associated with the types of capital that we have mentioned above. Is it easy for the farmer to buy land? No. Why? Because land is expensive. So we can say, number 1, we can say costing. What may happen to this building? You build it this year, after 10 years, will the value still be the same? No, it will be decreased. So what has happened to the value? It has depreciated. So we can talk about depreciation. Same applies to the planter. What about the animals? The animals may die. So we can say they are at high risk. That's how you easily analyze these questions. So we talk about the buildings, the houses, the fact that they are costly, the depreciation, and the fact that they are at high risk. That's the simplest way of understanding this part. I will not finish the slides that I had. Okay, let's look at this one. Let's look at this one. This will be the last one. This one. What are they saying here? They are saying a farmer obtained a loan of 2 million from a bank. A farmer obtained a loan of 2 million from a bank. Let's take note of 2 million, or let's take note of a loan. This loan was used to build a dam and install an irrigation system for a 50-hectare maize field. There is a loan. The loan is used to do what? To build a dam. We also install what? Irrigation system. On what? On a maize field. The farmer also purchased 3 bakkies, each worth 165,000 and 50 beef cattle using his inheritance from his parents. There is a loan. He built a dam and an irrigation system. Bakkies were bought using what? Inheritance. What does the first question say? Read through the table below in the answer book. Use the passage above as reference and write down the answers A to F. 7 marks for free. 7 marks for free. Type of capital. Example of that capital. Source of getting the capital. There's a type of capital. We have fixed capital. There's fixed capital. One of the fixed capital that we have there is a dam. There is land, the maize field. There is also the irrigation system. They said the farmer built a dam, irrigation system, with money that he got from where? From a loan. Simple. D. They are also cattle and bakkies. What type of capital is that? It's movable capital. He bought what with the bakkies and the cattle. Where did he get money to buy that? From inheritance. That's how you can easily understand it. Then they continue to say, at a later stage, the farmer experienced problems with capital. Study each of the statements below and indicate the type of capital problem the farmer experienced as a result of his actions in the passage. A. Buying 3 bakkies instead of only 1 bakkie which could perform all the tasks required. He decided to buy 3 bakkies, 3 instead of only 1. This means the farmer has invested more than what is required. So which problem is that? It's your over-capitalization. B. Getting a loan from a bank instead of using his inheritance. Getting a loan from the bank instead of using his inheritance. That talks about costly, high risk factor. So the costly, high interest rate. C. Investing lots of money in production inputs which yielded no profits and even led to losses as a result of natural resources like droughts. There was a loss because of natural disasters. There's a risk here. High risk factor. High risk factor. That's how easy it is for you to understand. That's how we can check it. That's how easy it is for you to understand the question. So make sure that you know your notes, and after knowing the notes, be able to apply the knowledge that you have in the questions. I'm sorry that we have taken a lot of time, but I do believe that if you can give yourself time, watch the first part whereby we try to analyze the notes or the summary notes, and then you also look at how we try to unpack the questions for you to understand. I'm sorry if I was very quick, but I do believe that you will be assisted. We will also look at the financial documents, and even there we will take our precious time in understanding the the financial documents that we will highlight, good people. So that's what we have to check. We will also check the other production factors. Thank you. Make it a point that you don't watch it once. You don't watch the video twice. You watch it 3 times or more. And when you watch it, you take some summary notes from the slide that is presented and from the voice that you hear, where I try to add some few statements or some few points which are not shown here on the on the slides or on the presentation that you see. Thank you, good people. Thank you. Let's keep on watching. Let's keep on subscribing. Let's keep on liking and sharing the page with other people. Thank you.